All right. Good afternoon. Welcome to the July 8th Jefferson County Board of Health meeting. Lindsay, will you please help us with the roll call?
Sure. Sarah Lane, present. Rochelle Wood, present. Harriet Hall, present. Sharon John, here. Lane Draper,
Present.
the Court of Business Admin.
Help us with language justice. Virtually.
Hi, everyone. Do you want me to give the instructions in both languages?
Yes, please.
Okay. So hi, everyone. Diego Pons here with the CLC. Just real briefly, the instructions to activate the interpretation. The host of the meeting will activate the interpretation in a moment. Once you see that globe icon appear, after I give these instructions in both languages, you'll see a globe icon that's going to say interpretation that will appear there in the bottom right-hand corner of your computer screen on the toolbar. That globe icon is going to say interpretation. I ask you to select it and to please choose your preferred language, in this case, English. If you're joining the meeting on your cell phone or tablet, please look for the More button or the three dots button there on your device, whether it's a tablet or a cell phone, so you can select your interpretation language that way. If you're not fully bilingual, I strongly encourage people to select the preferred language so you can listen to the interpretation in case anyone speaks in the opposite language and they would like to know what they are saying. People who are bilingual are more than encouraged to just not select the language channel. That way they don't have to hear my voice as the interpreter. And as always, just please make sure you don't speak at the same speed in which you read materials. If you have any questions, you can let me know through the chat. Thank you so much. Y buenas tardes a todos y a todas. Diego Ponce aquí hoy con el CLC. En un momento se activa la interpretación. Cuando se active esa interpretación, va a poder ver un icono de un globo a la tierra que va a decir interpretación ahí abajo en la derecha de su pantalla. Usted va a seleccionar ese icono globo a la tierra y va a elegir su idioma preferido, en este caso el español. Si está asistiendo a la reunión en su celular o en su tableta, busque por favor la opción que dice More, M-O-R-E, que quiere decir más, o un botón de 3 puntos ahí en la esquina de su dispositivo, lo cual le va a permitir a usted elegir su idioma preferido de esta otra manera. Así que si usted no es completamente bilingüe, le aconsejo que elija por favor su idioma preferido para que pueda utilizar la interpretación cuando alguien está hablando en el otro idioma. Si tienen alguna pregunta, nos pueden dejar saber por el chat. Muchas gracias. Ready.
Thank you, Diego. Our first item up is the consent agenda. You know, anything pulled off from that? Or are we good to approve?
I would move to approve the consent agenda. Second.
Second discussion. All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Consent agenda approved. Public comment, anyone here for public comments? No. Public comment. It's fine. And we'll jump to new business. And Jeanette is first up.
Hello. All right. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Anjanette Hawkins, and I am the Emergency Preparedness and Response Supervisor here at Jefferson County Public Health. Today, I'm excited to walk you through our newly updated Public Health Emergency Operations Plan, also known as the FEOP. Next slide, please. Before we dive in, I want to take a moment to explain why I'm here. To present the FEOP under Regulation 1, Section 3 of the 2023 revision of 6 CCR 1009-5. Local public health agencies are required to review, update, and submit their FEOP to the Board of Health at least once every 3 years. But this presentation today isn't just about meeting the requirement. It's also about a valuable opportunity to reinforce accountability, strengthen coordination, and make sure we're truly ready to protect the public's health during emergencies. Next slide, please. All right. So the FEOP is structured into 5 sections, and I'll review the main points of each section with you today. Next slide, please. The Jefferson County FEOP is our all hazards foundational plan. That means it's designed to guide our response to any type of threat, whether it's a wildfire, a pandemic, or a cyber attack. It gives us a clear structure for how we prepare, respond, and recover. And it's fully aligned with the National Incident Management System, or NIMS. Since 2011, we, the Emergency Preparedness and Response Team, have made numerous updates to the plan. But late last year, we took a major step forward and completely rewrote it. We streamlined the content, modernized the structure, and aligned it with today's best practices. One big improvement is that we reduced the plan by 32 pages and moved action items into separate standard operating procedures, or SOPs, so that they're easier for us to find during a response. We also updated mobile access to the plan and standard operating procedures so that staff can easily access them when they're not in office. Next slide, please. Section 1, the introduction, lays our foundation for the plan. It includes our letter of agreement, the plan's purpose, scope, legal authorities, a profile of Jefferson County, and our planning assumptions. Our legal authority comes from Colorado Revised Statutes, which gives us power to act during emergencies like issuing isolation or quarantine orders. Oversight comes from you, the Board of Health. Also includes a snapshot of our county, our geography, our demographics, and the regional partners we work with to stay prepared. Every 3 years, we update our risk assessments. And right now, our top threats include cyber attacks, floods, pandemics, power outages, and high winds. Those are our top 5. And these risks shape our planning priorities. Like any emergency plan, we start with planning assumptions, what we expect to be true when we're activated, and these help us prepare realistically, even when things don't go exactly as planned. Next slide, please. All right, section 2 explains how we operate across all phases of a disaster: preparedness, response, recovery, and mitigation. Under the general operations, Jefferson County Public Health EPR leads public health emergency efforts with a focus on fast, equitable, and community-centered response. We follow the national guidelines and prioritize those most at risk. As for the Emergency Support Function 8, or ESF 8, we use the Incident Command System, or ICS. We have 7 primary workforce members for the ESF 8 seat in the county's Emergency Operations Center, plus 2 backup members. Our roles and responsibilities: all workforce members are trained in ICS and can be reassigned during a response. Our policy group is made up of division directors who help us set those priorities and ensure that we operate within the appropriate scope. And last but not least, our responses are led by Dr. Story, our executive director, who also has the final decision-making authority. There are 3 types of disasters that we plan for. Emergency declaration, which is going to be a broader emergency, can be used for like planned events or limited incidents. Then we have the disaster declaration, which is larger in scale, often natural or man-made disasters. And then we have the public health emergency declaration, which is going to be your health specific, often layered on top of the other declarations to unlock additional resources. All 3 can trigger the activation of our FIOP and support resource requests. But the public health emergency declaration, again, is specifically focused on health-related threats that might be an issue independently or alongside the other declarations. Our plan also accounts for 3 levels of declarations: local, state, and presidential. And each level brings different types of support. Coordination, access to resources, from your local mutual aids to federal funding and national assets. Next slide, please. All right. Section 3 provides a structured approach for managing emergencies, from the first signs of a threat through demobilization and recovery. Each response begins with what we call an incident size up. It's a quick structured assessment to help us understand the situation and decide if activation is needed and if so, at what level. Our EPR team monitors all incidents and adjusts staffing and resources based on the threat. We also have trained volunteers ready to support large-scale events. Activation of the plan falls under the authority of Dr. Story or her designee. We also work closely with our health communications team to ensure that all of our public messaging is timely, accurate, and approved. Our public information officers collaborate with the county-wide public information officers to keep communication clear, consistent, and inclusive. As response activities wind down, we begin that demobilization section. This is a structured process to release staff, equipment, and resources in a coordinated way instead of just sending them off. And this is going to be separate from the tactical response to ensure there's a smooth transition from tactical response to that demobilization. And then comes recovery. As immediate needs ease, our focus shifts to long-term restoration and resilience. Our EPR team leads the recovery efforts with Dr. Story's approval. And while response may last days or weeks, recovery can stretch on for months or even years. It includes restoring the services, assessing infrastructure, integrating mitigation strategies, and recovering costs. And every activation, big or small, triggers an after-action review. And this is how we learn, improve, and build stronger response for the future. Next slide. Section 4 provides reference tools to help staff navigate the FIAP. It outlines who's responsible for maintaining the plan and defines key terms and acronyms. We use a lot of acronyms in EPR. You haven't noticed. Our EPR team manages the plan and all supporting documents. We follow a structured process for updates, including stakeholder input, training alignments, and divisions can propose changes, which may be used temporarily, but if approved, we will formally adopt them in the next review. We also included an acronyms and terms to clearly define those so that they're easy to locate, because clear communication is essential, especially during a crisis. Next slide, please. Section 5 summarizes recent changes and helps users quickly find what they need. We track all updates to maintain version accuracy. If we make major changes to the structure or core concepts, we will adopt a new version. Smaller updates are tracked within the current version. We also use bookmarks to flag where our Public Health Accreditation Board, or FAB, requirements are located in our FIAP. And as new requirements come in, we'll continue to bookmark them at the end of the document for easy access. Next slide, please. All right. To summarize, the FIAP outlines our roles, strategies, and a process for continuous improvement. It's designed for coordination, flexibility, and real-world readiness. The latest version strengthens our ability to respond quickly, collaborate across agencies, and protect our community when it matters most. Currently, the FIAP is being reviewed by and signed by our directors. And once all signatures are complete, including Dr. Story's, it will be submitted to the Board of Health President Drager for final review and approval. So that's all I have. Thank you so much for your time. And I'm happy to take any questions.
I have a question.
Sure.
And I'm not sure which slide it was.
That's okay.
Back maybe 4.
Okay.
It ended with the recovery piece.
Uh-huh.
Give me kind of a picture of how we work with other health departments. I mean, when there is something big that happens,
Mm-hmm.
I know that, you know, from different health departments, they all get called in.
Mm-hmm.
How do they coordinate? How do they work? And how is that working now?
So within the EPR realm, we actually meet with our other EPR coordinators on a monthly basis. across the region. And then most recently, within the last year and a half, we were meeting with other EPR coordinators across the state. On
EPR.
emergency preparedness
Oh,
and
yeah,
response.
okay.
So when our partners have some sort of response, they share that with us, lessons learned, where they're at with their recovery phases. What things they did really well so that we can adapt or take that information and update our plans as well and our response efforts. Within the region, which is the Denver metro region, we actually meet on a monthly basis with that group. And talk about any responses, any planning efforts. Just giving everybody that situational awareness and how to again improve our response efforts.
You know, if you look at the horrific, it just is so heartbreaking, the flood that just that everybody's watching. How would the different health departments come together? It can't all be put on just that health department. And
No,
I understand Texas is Texas and Texas is different. But let's say that it happened here, it's the big Thompson that happened how many
Yeah.
years ago?
so we
How
have,
do all of the
Yeah.
entities come together?
so we have an MOU signed through CDPHE to support other emergency support function aides. So other health departments during disasters. So during the quarry fire, for example,
Okay,
we got lots of requests from our surrounding health departments saying, hey, if you guys need support, we're here to sit in your seat for you. If you guys need a rest, if you guys are just need a break or need someone to take over that seat, let us know, and we're happy to initiate that MOU that we have and come support you.
so there's kind of a notice that goes out that
Yeah,
here's a
so
crisis somewhere.
in the Denver metro region, if two health departments activate their FIOP, we actually have a coordination call
Okay.
with the other health departments in the region. If one agency activates their FIOP, we notify the Denver metro region so that they are aware that we have activated our FIOP and that we are mobilizing resources.
Thank you.
Mhm.
So a similar question about how we coordinate with the municipal governments and the human services organizations and other organizations across Jefferson County.
So with the municipalities, we work with their emergency management. We do the EPR, public health EPR for the entire county, which includes the municipalities. We do work closely with all the municipalities here in Jefferson County. They can give us a call at any time on our 24/7 number. And we would respond to their emergency operations center if they requested us, or we would respond to the county emergency operations center to support them from a county level.
And other organizations, like the mental health center for example.
Yeah, so we do have, we are working on a MOU with the mental health center. During COVID, they supported us during vaccination sites, and we're working on a MOU with Jefferson Center for Mental Health, specifically for our points of dispensing sites, so that they can come support not only our responders, but also our clientele as well. Other organizations that we might support, there's actually a collaboration with other emergency managers across the county, not just municipalities, and so we meet on a monthly basis together to talk about how we can coordinate regionally and then also support locally as well. And that group includes everyone from our federal partners like NREL, the Federal Center. It includes a vast variety of industries that have emergency managers. And then in addition to that, we have our healthcare coalition where we collaborate with healthcare emergency managers. And that includes our hospitals, our EMS, our emergency medical services, our ancillary care, our long-term care facilities, our home health dialysis emergency managers. So we're talking a lot.
Mhm.
Did that answer your question?
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, I mean, I guess I specifically was just thinking of the the fact that disasters usually have trauma that goes along with them. And I know that in the past, there hasn't always been the smoothest coordination with the mental health centers. Services there and some of the other things that go on in the county, so,
Yeah,
yeah,
There's-
hopefully that's addressed.
there's actually a regional behavioral health committee that meets every other month. And they work through that regional coordination and how they can support. And we attend that meeting and talk about what we can do to support, what we'll need for support as well. And then we also provide in the ESF 8C behavioral health as part of our components. And so we've met with JC Major, Jefferson Center Mental Health to talk about what kind of services they would need from us. Like, what are the expectations? What are the capabilities that they have? And then we share our capabilities and expectations so that we're on the same page when a response happens and the county calls them to support.
And where does the schools fit into all that coordination?
The schools have their own seat in the in the Emergency Operations Center. And they bring a representative to the Emergency Operations Center. We also coordinate with the schools as well. They came to our points of dispensing exercise last year. And have been pretty interested in our new initiative, which is pediatric disaster kits that we have for, we're calling them comfort kits for kids. If there's any disasters, we have these pediatric comfort kits that we can disperse to them. So we've been in contact with them about that as well.
Thanks.
Can you talk a little bit about in the recovery portion, like what part of recovery includes aspects of resilience for a community to then prepare for next? Is that in recovery? Is that a different part of like where you all are and what happens? Is it not part of the job? We talk a little bit about resilience.
Yeah, so it is during recovery, you are correct. It's one of those fine lines where you, as you're moving through the cycle of recovery and meeting with resilience, and moving back into that community preparedness phase, because there's still a sense of trauma from the event, it's a line that you want to be careful with, but you also want to build that resilience. So when we work in recovery and build that resilience, we want to be aware of the trauma and have that trauma-informed lens. And we want to really help people get back to their new normal. And so that's where that resilience piece is going to be, is showing them and guiding them into where they can get back to that new normal and what they can do different the next time this might happen, so that they're ready and prepared. So that's part of that recovery cycle, and that's why it just takes a long time. Is building that resilience after the disaster, because recovery is just a long time. And even the quarry fire, we're still recovering from that in many different ways. And so we're building that resilience from, for example, the quarry fire by working with emergency management. We did a post-recovery survey to see how the community members felt with our response, which has never been done before. And then also what we can do to maybe help them with community preparedness in the future to help build that. We've also been posting some doing initiatives on that community preparedness to help build that resiliency, and especially in those communities that are higher risk for the natural disasters that we have. So it's in recovery. Again, you want to have that trauma-informed lens to be cognizant of other people's emotions and feelings and what they went through, but also build on to that to help them get prepared and resilient, moving into that next phase of community preparedness.
You mentioned, excuse me, that in section 5, it goes over a summary of changes. I think the summary of changes is exciting because that means that those changes are made from lessons learned. Can you give us a sneak peek at a couple of the changes that maybe we're going to be seeing?
Well, because we just wrote it in this December. There aren't any summary of changes yet. Some of the ones that we've had in the past was updating our public health IMT requirements, our FAB requirements that we had. We had changed our public health IMT several years ago, so we needed to update that into the FIA. We also had some ESF8 seat changes that we added and the activation levels. That's something new that we spent all year writing, was updating our activation levels. So that is now new in the FIA. But the 2011 one was 66 pages long and included all of these new updates. And so now that we have this new FIA that's only 32 pages long, we're just now getting it approved, and right now no summary of changes, but in the past we did have those types of changes that were placed into the FIA form.
And when I asked that, I thought you said there was an additional 32 pages. You've lessened it.
Lessened it to 32 pages.
Alright.
So it was originally 66 pages, and we've lessened it to 32 pages.
All right, glad I asked. Thank you.
Mhm. Mhm.
What's your,
Go ahead.
just gonna see your timeline for when the board will see that. Give it a total bit.
3 directors have signed it thus far. So we have 3 more directors, including Dr. Story, to sign it, and then it will be forwarded to you.
So
So,
I would want to make sure the whole board gets to see that.
okay,
Because typically.
yeah, well, we will get it sent out to you.
Awesome.
Are you looking at a month,
Probably about a month.
6 months, 3
We're
months?
giving each director about 2 weeks to review it, so I would
Okay.
say probably a month.
Well,
If not
that's what
less.
directors have.
Yeah.
Joe said he signed it.
Those signed it.
Record.
My like follow-on question to the resilience question is there anything within the FIOP or otherwise of the department that looks at and understands emergency response and resilience for staff within Jefferson? In the recovery portion of emergency.
Can you state your question a different way?
So often emergencies have direct emotional and otherwise implications on the staff of Jefferson County. Is there any part of the FIOP or other plans that respond to how to build and support resilience in the Jefferson County staff in the recovery process?
So one of the training needs assessments that was one of the items in there was community preparedness. And getting our staff prepared, and so we are beginning with that piece, is getting our staff prepared, helping them see that disasters can strike to anyone, they don't care where you are, who you are. And so working on getting go kits for our staff, shelter in place kits, helping them see if their family is prepared and ready for a response or a disaster, that they will be ready to respond to that disaster personally. One of the things that we have in place is if we have a disaster that affects staff, is really focusing on promoting that employee assistance program that's available, and then the newly founded 988 for mental health crisis. During the Marshall fire, we actually sent out a notification to our staff to see if anybody was affected by the fire and evacuating and how we could support them. And that was more like staff just wanting to help staff. It wasn't a formal JCPH support. It was just like, let's help if staff need help with evacuation. But there's the language in the FIOP is not specifically for a plan to build resilience. But what we're doing is we're starting with that staff preparedness piece. Mhm.
So I have a thing that kind of ties into that I have a question about. Anytime staff, I don't care who they are, go to a disaster, it's going to affect them, period.
Mhm.
My question is, it's maybe they weren't affected personally, quote, their property or whatever,
Mhm.
that's an emotional thing.
Mhm.
Do we have something in place that addresses that? You know, when I was working as a volunteer victim advocate, we always had a person or whatever to call
Mhm.
for, kind of a brain dump,
Mhm.
because some of them were awful.
Mhm.
Is there something for our?
Yeah, that's called demobilization,
Yeah,
sorry.
that's it.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's called demobilization. It's a time for you to meet with the responders, the other responders in the group. Have that debrief, talk about what went well, what didn't go well. You're with the other responders. So they understand kind of the event. And it's facilitated by, somebody that is assigned to do the demobilization. So that our staff can go home with that, kind of debrief opportunity to, kind of get everything off their chest that happens to help, kind of talk about it with someone. It can be, there's also opportunities that after the big group demobilization to do one-on-one with someone in the behavioral health sector as well.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think this is all important as part of recovery too, because not everyone recognizes the trauma has impacted them. And sometimes it's delayed, but also just the impact of recovery on staff, especially if they're a part of response. And then they get moved into recovery for months and years. And that has an ongoing stress and additional strain. And it's hard for us to budget for that, but it's an important thing for us to think about how are we going to bring in resources versus just keep doing more with the same amount that we have. So
Yeah.
that process of how do we request additional resources from the commissioners, is there, again, state or federal resources for doing that? Because my experience is always, that always comes way after you do it. So recognizing mutual aid, all that too. When you go mobilizing those things really quickly for this, again, you can burn people out and finally get resources to support them, but burnout has already occurred, so. Those are important, so we'll see how that's reflected if you have without people, I think, to really highlight. Anybody else, questions? Well, great work, those are difficult documents, and having them be living documents versus just a giant document that sits there is important too, so.
Thank you all so much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, next new business, Mitch. Say wastewater regulation update.
Hello. Do we have the right connections with them?
You can join the Zoom and share.
Does that make-
That's usually the easiest way,
Right.
rather than bring boards.
Recording in progress.
I'll just do a check-in with Diego. How are we doing on our conversation pace?
Sorry, I'm trying to get this turned back on.
Quick.
I thought I had the sound turned off.
Tech support.
I don't know.
Don't ask me to push a button. It's not good.
Come on, my X isn't working. Leave meeting. Thank you.
Sure it is.
We're all good with touch screens.
When almost fails, turn the computer off.
Hi, thank you. Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Mitch. I am the Water Quality Program Supervisor. And so I'm here today to update you on our on-site wastewater regulations update. So just a quick background in, I guess, June 15th, when they went into effect. But there are Reg 43 is the state department on-site wastewater regulations, which we follow and are required to adopt in some version of the other. So. Sorry. So regulation 43 is kind of a framework for us, and in their regulations, I should say, they do have some caveats that we as the local health departments do need to follow. So the first one being that the local boards of health we'll have 1 year from the effective date to update our local regulations. And then the other key to that is that it must be as stringent as this regulation. So what, like the, June 15th is when that went into effect, so we kind of started the process of what we would be doing for our regulations to get them updated. And then hopefully adopted, within the year. The other part that regulation 43 lines out for us is a little bit of a process of what we need to do in order to adopt these regulations. One of those being that CDPHE, we must submit a draft of our regulation to them, at which point they have 30 days to review that. And that is prior to the public hearing. So they want to see what we're going to propose to adopt before it goes out for public hearing. We will hold a public hearing, and that's also a requirement there that says that you will hold a public hearing, and then we do have to give at least 20 days notice prior to that hearing. So we'll be doing some communications with the community and then our stakeholders as well. At which point we come to you guys and we would be looking for adoption. Once those regulations are adopted, we do have 5 days to get those back to CDPHE for their review again. And then they have 45 days until that regulation becomes effective. So looking at our timeline to have these in place, and what we're trying to do is get these in place for June. Usually the summer season gets pretty busy with the on-site wastewater community. And so instead of trying to bring a new regulation about in the middle of their busy season, we're going to try to get it just before the busy season. So with that, our timeline looking at this summer of 2025 is we'll be working on the draft. So the OW team will start, we've got some other projects that we're finishing up, and we're going to start working on the technical detail, the ins and outs of the regulation, what's in regulation 43 that we need to take a closer look at, and then to carry over into our regulations. Then hopefully we'll have a first draft finished by fall of 2025, at which point we would put it out to the stakeholders. So stakeholders being real estate community, elected officials, our neighboring communities, and then the on-site wastewater industry, and then other regulations, or I guess, yeah, other regulating neighbors. And looking to give them about 30-day window to make their comments and give us the feedback on the items that are in the regulations. We'll take those comments, discuss them, kind of look them over, and incorporate what we can and what we see that we need to incorporate. So then hopefully by winter of 2025, we'll be back for you all. Oh, sorry, I take that back. Before that, we would actually present another draft, a second draft to the county attorney's office for their review, and then also the CDPHE. So that's where that 30-day review comes in, that we would present to them for their review before going to public hearing. So at that point, we're hoping that we've kind of worked through all the technical details, the nuts and the bolts of the regulations. And at this point now, it's just kind of for, mostly it's going to be the attorney's office for legal review, CDPHE as well. And then we would come back and then present to you all, Board of Health, for your review, that you all have a view of what's in the regulations and what we're looking at doing. After we receive all the feedback from you three agencies, then we would go ahead, review the draft, just revise the draft. That's when draft 3 would come about. And that's when we're hoping by spring of 2026, particularly the March Board of Health meeting, that we would be before you all again to adopt the regulations. So the goal being there, if we can have that adopted by March, 45 day meeting period, they become effective May 1st, which would be just before the busy season. And then a side note, like our current regulations that were adopted last time, their effective date was May 4th. So I don't think that should be too much of an issue, but I'm trying to work with the community as much as possible. The anticipated changes that we're seeing with Reg 43. So there are updates from the state level at Reg 43, and these are mandatory. So these will be items that we will have to have in our regulation. So we're hoping there's going to not be too much of a discussion with the stakeholders on this, as it's one of those things that we just kind of have to do. But it's more, we're gonna have a lot of internal discussions of how we're going to implement some of these items. The two areas that I foresee right now as being the area that we're really going to need to probably focus on is table 4-1. So back in 2018, we did have a Board of Health directive to research a little bit of our infamous table 4-1, which in our regulations, we basically dictate whether or not property can be developed upon based on lot size and parcel creation date, and then the water source. And so we wanted to get away from that and get to more of a science-based reason as to why we're creating lot sizes. So Roy Laws, when he was here, he helped us have a model that he worked on for years. And we drafted a kind of a policy, I guess I should say, it became the Indian Hill policy. But that model that we used for that Indian Hill policy that we adopted, I believe about 3 years ago, is the basis for the change from table 4-1. So now we're looking to take it from Indian Hills and expand it into our regulations for the rest of the county. The other area that I kind of foresee will have a bit of changes is our transfer of title program, or we call it the use permit program. And the way that I kind of best describe that is a lot like the Carfax for septic systems. So a third-party inspector will come out, inspect the septic system before use. When you go to sell the house before the closing, they'll do an inspection, and that's a time for us to find anything that needs to be fixed and amended at that time or repaired. So at the national level, that NAWT is the National Association of Wastewater Technicians. They are the ones that have kind of created a standard for what these use permit inspectors are looking at. And so they just recently updated their standards. So at the state level, we're leading a group that has all the transfer title programs to kind of work together to be consistent. Right now, there's 22 counties that have adopted this transfer title program, and each one kind of does them a little bit differently. And it's just based on agency resources and then political flavors of the county. So it is an opt-in, which means it's optional for the counties to adopt. We have adopted it. We actually have a transfer title program for many decades. So this isn't completely new for us, but because it is an optional program, grade 43, this is kind of why I put it here as it might be one that would be a little more controversial, if you will. So with that, we're again up here to give you kind of the highlights, the heads up of what's coming down the pike for the OW regulations, but just kind of want to summarize what we're looking for with you is the engagement of the stakeholder process. When we do have that stakeholder period open, we're going to be holding at least one stakeholder comment period, or it'll be in person or online as well. And so I was suggested to coordinate with you all that you would have your input and perhaps your involvement when we have that stakeholder meeting. To kind of be part of the public engagement on that. And then after we've gone through kind of the reviews and whatnot, again, we'll have that second draft for you all to review. And then the last part of this that we'll need from you really is the adoption of those regulations. Well, with that, that's kind of the plan for the regulation revision down the road here in the next several months.
You said that you reach out to the stakeholders. What is your process for that? Who are the stakeholders that you target and how do you reach them?
So right now, one of the projects that I mentioned that we're working on is just kind of updating our website. So what we're looking to do is utilize our website as kind of our portal for where to go to get the regulations and then to be able to leave feedback. You found out in the past, when you email out a copy or Word copy to everybody, you get 30 Word copies back and they're all marked up differently. So trying to streamline that process to use our website and make it more efficient for us. But our stakeholders is going to be the on-site industry, so the contractors, or the installers, the cleaners, the designers, the engineers, the use permit inspectors, those folks. And then we would be working with our regulatory neighbors. So for example, right now, I've been coordinating with Gilpin County and with Boulder County because our border touch and our more tougher areas to regulate are all very similar. And we also share similar OW industry partners. So trying to be a little more consistent on our regulations. The real estate community is another stakeholder that we'll be needing to work with because that transfer title program really hinges on the cooperation of the real estate realtors, real estate agents. then I mentioned elected officials, so you are, so I did appointed official as well, so you all would be part of that. And then staff, our staff is stakeholder as well, and then the public. They will be the ones that are affected by these regulations, and that some of you may recall, we do have a very engaged and vocal group in Indian Hills that would love to be part of this, so we will be working with them as well. And then to get out, we'll have a health communications plan put together here, but again, trying to use that website.
So I'm just wondering how it's going in Indian Hills and the new, not so new anymore, regs that would, because I remember that process.
Yeah. So far, it's been pretty good. That group has been fairly quiet. I think they've kind of appreciated being heard and getting the policy in place to what they were looking towards. Some of them might not think that it was perfect, but they've got better than what it was.
Mhm.
I will say that since the policy went in place, off the top of my head, I know of about 2 groups that have taken advantage of that policy and it's worked out for them.
Okay, okay, and it's not led to a lot of complaints.
No, it hasn't.
That's good. I mean, I figured it hadn't, or we would have heard.
Yeah, actually, the 2 that have taken advantage of it were the 2 that were most involved with that policy.
Because we have new folks that couldn't even begin to understand what that policy is or even know about it. Just do a very brief synopsis of what it was we did so that they are updated.
Sure, sorry. So back in the 70s and 60s, I believe, going that far back, studies have been done and they've shown that there was a high concentration of nitrate pollution in the water out there, and so that being a concern, especially Jen, and then it's also a health concern for babies. The Board of Health back then, pretty much put in place a prohibition in Indian Hills, and it's actually one of the only prohibition in the state. And what it did, it was looking at the lot sizes, and so they created a map of these very densely populated areas of Indian Hills, and basically it wasn't built on, there was a moratorium of no new septic systems on those properties. So in a way that essentially led to a prohibition building in Indian Hills for several decades. Technology's kind of changed and some of the policies and regs have changed a little bit, so we were asked to look at if that could be the policy, the resolution could be kind of amended. So what we did is we went back and using this model that Gloria Claus created that we're going to use for the new regulations, we kind of looked at 3 things, and that was the design flow. So how much waste are we putting into the environment, our ability to clean up that waste, and then lot size. So using kind of those 3 factors, we're looking at a science-based, can somebody actually end up developing this property? So for example, if you have a very tiny lot, you're probably not gonna be able to put an 8-bedroom house on that lot because that waste flow is gonna be so great, despite how much you can clean it up. But if you get down to like these, again, smaller lots that we have in Indian Hills, something a little more reasonable, like a 3-bedroom home, plus you treat it to the highest level, then you could most likely develop those and not add to that nitrate pollution. And in some degrees, with that policy, there's some areas that we are looking to actually start reversing some of that nitrate pollution. So the policy outlines that model, how we're going to put that into effect, who it affects, which areas. We have 2 different areas in Indian Hills, the prohibition area, and then what we call the upslope area. And that was, again, kind of my understanding based on the studies in the 70s of the lot sizes and where they were finding the greatest concentration of that nitrate pollution.
One of the issues is, it's the existing systems that are the problem, like brand new systems, so. Bringing in new systems to replace old systems is a good thing, so, yeah, all prohibition on construction isn't necessarily ever fix the problem, it's just gonna potentially not. Well, absolutely, it's gonna continue to get worse, because those systems continue to not perform as well, essentially, especially if they're not maintained, so really looking holistically at. We need to really address this problem. Sometimes construction can actually be the solution by bringing in new systems and then eventually helping others upgrade their existing systems so that your net construction reduces the overall pollution. So just trying to keep people thoughtful about what's happening out there.
And I have a very high level question. How often are these sunset wastewater regulations updated? And do you have any like background as to like? And maybe we'll, I'm guessing we'll get this in when we adopt the regulations later, but. A little bit of the why behind why some of the regulations were updated.
Yeah. So this version of the regulations that first came out in 2013, which when the state had their regulation 43. Prior to that, it was just guidelines, and so it was really every county kind of for themselves. And they were mostly basing their regulations off of the 1950s manual and how best practices. So a lot of that is to bring it into the 21st century, if you will. So looking back at the science. So the regulations themselves are supposed to be updated about every 3 to 5 years. So 2013 was the first iteration, 2018 was our second version, and then this is the third version of the regulation 22. And then a lot of the why I can kind of, and again, big picture there. Regulations are never perfect, and so there's lots of things that we find that we can tweak a little bit better, be a little more effective, and something to make a little more sense. One of my examples would be for regulation 43, we were just using the material that was on site to do the filtering of the wastewater in the ground in the leach field. They found some studies back in, mostly out of Wisconsin, but different type of sand or specific type of sand, I should say, offers the best type of treatment. So starting flow through the material and then removing those pathogens. So they incorporated a requirement for sand. That was the first version of that, they required it. It wasn't very specific enough. And so then in the second version, they got a little more technical and they required, they had created 2 classes of sand, preferred and secondary sand. Preferred being preferred, and that's really what the studies show. But we were having a hard time finding that type of sand out here. So that's where the secondary sand requirements came into play. Third version now is we're still finding hard to find that sand, and it's very hard for us to really verify that that's truly what the sand that's going in the leach fields is. So they're going back to just having one type of sand.
Great example, thank you.
With all of the, moving parts out there right now, especially on the environmental stuff. Do you see any downside that could be taking away your abilities, with Jefferson County's abilities to address some of these problems, to do some of the work that you all do? I mean, do you feel pretty safe with your funding and all of that?
I'll say we could always use more people. With the reg 43, some of the requirements for us have increased. So for example, on our operations and maintenance, so those higher level treatment units, the filters, higher level treatment units, if we have properties with higher risk, so like the smaller, back to the Indian policy, that's what we require on all of these units or systems out there. Are the extra units that kind of create, do a little more treatment before it goes out to the environment. So kind of like the Brita filters for septic systems. Those require maintenance. And so back in the day, we would require a startup and a contract that somebody's going out and maintaining those. And those contracts would be good for about 2 years. And then after that, we never followed up on whether or not those systems and units were actually being maintained. So 2013 when regulation 43 came along, that's another one of those optional programs or opt-ins on the regulations. So something we've been doing for a while, and actually we're the leader of number of higher level treatment units incorporated into systems in the state. So we're kind of the experts on that. So our system, our program tracks a lot of that. And that's where now it's taking more of our time to follow through and make sure everybody's contracts are up to date. They're maintaining those contracts and that they are submitting those reports. So a lot of database, a lot of administration time, and then inspector time to kind of be the one that enforces upon that.
This is one of the programs that is funded, so looking at the potential increases in sources you need.
Like that's what, yeah.
Based on further review, whether you're talking about operating permits to do some of that stuff or things like that, those are important things that we build in as into discussion for stakeholders as well, so they're prepared that hey, this also Being increased fees potentially too.
And right now, on the last budget that we, or the fees, I guess, schedule that we had passed, or you all have passed. We do have our permits kind of broken into two categories, one with a higher level treatment and one without higher level treatment. So we do charge a little bit more to recoup some of that extra staff time, cost for those permits that have a higher level treatment.
So will we be reviewing the fees structure as well, along with the regulation, or does that come after?
That'll come after, that'll be separate from the
Yeah,
regulations.
I assume that would make sense.
My hope is the way that things are, our fee structure would be dependent on just the amount of time that we're putting into it. So with the reg provision, it hopefully, it's just more, I should say, my goal, my hope is that it kind of cleans up a lot of the areas that make headaches for us. So I'm hoping our time isn't spent on chasing out a lot of these headaches, and we can kind of clean things up. So our fees hopefully will not have to change much, but I'll know more come
Yeah.
October.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Well, I'm happy that probably the timeline will not hold in my timeline, so happy to just share thoughts before I continue, so.
Yeah. We try to get them a little bit closer, but or quicker, but just the amount of work there is involved.
There's a lot with both, and a lot of people that thought too, so.
Well, thank you all.
Thank you.
Nice. Next item is budget presentation for 2026 budget. Joe and Dr. Sawyer.
Have a good time.
Yeah, I'm just gonna share my screen. Okay. Nope. Yep, yes, okay, great. Hi, y'all are very engaged today, so hopefully you didn't get all your questions out before we get to talk about the budget. Okay. This will be an ongoing process, so this is the first of multiple presentations. I'm Sarah, Joe, and in addition, all of the division directors and Joe's team, specifically Salma, have had some input on this budget preview you're going to see. There's a couple of reasons we're doing this in this way. You might be thinking it's July, so why are we talking about 2026 when we've already submitted our first go at a draft for 2026 to the budget office? And so it starts very early, and Joe will dig more into the timeline so you can see where you're going to have the most involvement across this process. But there's a bigger reason that I wanted to just bring it to you now, is because when we've presented things like the fee schedule or budgets, we'll throw it at you sometimes in November and say, hey, in December, we need this approved. If we start now walking through the process by which we've chosen what to ask for, then you'll have more opportunities to give feedback and to actually, potentially make a change in the way that we're approaching the process. The most important thing is consistently in the last 2 years, almost 2 years, I've heard from staff, it's like you all go in a black box and come out and then you've made decisions. And what I really want to do, and what we both want to do, is lay out how we got to this decision. It is based on a train of thought that is sometimes logical, sometimes it's emotional, but we'll always be honest about how we got where we are. And we did things a little bit different this year, given the world gestures around. So Joe will actually start us off. So
the agenda we're gonna leave a lot of time for questions and clarification. We're not showing you a spreadsheet today. We're not showing you individual program budgets. We're gonna stay kind of high level, but you will get some overall amounts and the difference between this year and last year and the years before, and generally what our priorities are. And it's great that you heard from two very robust programs. And those questions actually informed for me some of the responses that I might have for you in this presentation. So we're gonna talk about the timeline. We're gonna give you a little background level setting on like, how does this budget compare to other budgets? And then I'm going to jump into what are our priorities for funding and lay it out as clearly as possible for you. And then we're gonna talk, Joe's gonna talk about capital improvement, which is a little different than we have discussed the budget before. Because we do have some capital ideas and capital pitches that we're making. And then we'll open it up for questions or feedback from all of you. So, Joe, take it away.
Good afternoon, everyone. So I want to start this slide with a huge sigh of relief. Noting the tremendous amount of work, the tremendous amount of lift that our team has put together to get to this point in the budget process. Looking at this consolidated timeline, it might give the impression that we're at the starting of this process, but I assure you that's not the case. It's important to make it very clear that the budget development process is constant and ongoing. Some may even say endless or never ending. But through this continuous process, we have become more transparent and engaged throughout the department. And I assure you that it is very impressive. It's impressive to see that the budget, funding, return on investment has become more ingrained in our discussions. It has become more of that environment that we are in. And I will say it's encouraging. It's encouraging to see the amount of involvement, the ownership, the accountability around the budget situation. This is no longer the pointing the finger. This shouldn't be the black box, the box, the closed door discussions. This is our team. This is our department. This is part of our environment. Getting to the timeline, and I'm not onto those stages just yet, but I wanted to mention that the first quarter of the calendar year is probably the most dormant part of the process of the budget cycle. However, this is the time frame in which the county determines what the guidance is going to be for that upcoming budget cycle. Thankfully, the direction we've received in preparation for our internal process is to keep our budget stable. So the county is not mentioning reductions for our next budget year process. That is something that is uplifting, you know, to know the trajectory that the county has been on, where we are with tax funding, general funds, to have a guidance needs level is tremendously helpful. However, it is our external partners and our funding support that has become unstable and has added uncertainty to this process. So after an extraordinary effort by our team, our program staff, our supervisors, our directors, and most importantly, Salma and her amazing finance team, and including the countless hours of discussion, we have a budget to submit to the county commissioners for consideration. This is a milestone in this process. This is the job's not done yet, but we've come a long way. It's been an exhausting process. I also want to note that we've heard the board loud and clear that this process needs to be transparent. We need to build our case to support our efforts, the teams behind these efforts, but also to slow down to involve everyone, including the board, and not ask for a hastened vote. So and also to take the time for consideration, reflection, and accountability. With our request for next year are several business cases or decision packages, which have been developed by the division directors, working amongst various teams, and once finalized by the division directors, submitted to us. to Dr. Story to be included in our department asks. There's a lot in these decision packages. You'll see in a moment the amount associated with these various decision packages. But these decision packages are wide ranging and help restore the lost grant funding, realign our priorities, and invest in the future of public health in Jefferson County. Now looking at finally utilizing this slide. We will be discussing these requests along with our proposed operating budget with the commissioners on August 20th. That's when our presentation is currently scheduled. Then in October, the Board of County Commissioners will consider the collective county budget and is planning to hold a proposed budget hearing. Assuming there are no further considerations, a budget adoption hearing is planned for November. It's currently scheduled for November. We've seen it in December, we've seen it late November with the holidays. It's on our books, it's on the calendar, but I wouldn't say it's etched in stone just yet. Yep. There's a lot of information on this slide. A lot of context, a lot of figures. And jumping ahead to the 2025 budget in comparison to the 2026 budget proposal, there could be some mixed feelings. It's a big gap, could be a sticker shock. Or hopefully there's some excitement there. We've got a lot in place. We've got a lot on the table. And I think it's important to note that that's where we need to be. That's where our department is moving. This is a collective effort to bring us to where we need to be. Budget has already come up a couple times in the conversations today. This is putting it all on paper. This is putting it all before the commissioners, before the board, to make sure that we are accounting for what we need to account for, the figures that we need to move forward in the most productive way. I will say our final budget will fall somewhere in between these figures, but I wanted to point out that a significant portion of the proposed increases tied to a capital improvement plan, capital projects, which I will be discussing a little bit later. I also think it's important, let me see, yeah. So there's a small little figure there, a little pie chart noted as general fund, And of course, bringing attention to this very small pie chart, you would think that that should be much bigger. But I think it's important to note how insignificant it is and how small it is, how hard it is to read, how difficult it is to tie into that little, I know Carrie knows where I'm going. It's important to identify this tiny figure, which is our portion of the general fund. There's a lot to be said about how much we do, how efficient we have become with such a small sliver of the pie. I will say this big gap in between where we are and where we want to be does not move that figure much more. You wouldn't be able to read the number. The number won't increase to the magnitude where it'd be more legible at that font size. So there's a lot of figures here, giving just the board some understanding of how our functional expenditures are proportionate amongst the department. There's a lot going on. There's not a significant majority of that pie going to one area over another. I think we're more balanced than we have been in many years, in many previous years. There's also a trend, which I won't spend any time with. There is a remaining budget figure in 2022 of 14%. That is obviously would be concerning if that wasn't a year associated with COVID funds and the lack of opportunity to spend those opportunities. So a lot there. I won't spend any time with that.
We can always come back
Won't
to the
spend any
slide.
more time.
We can always come back to the slide during your questions. If there were numbers that you wanted us to go back over, we're happy to do that. Thank you for that. So 27.5 is the number. That's the full number. It's in the realm of normal for all of the last, decade, adjusted for inflation, potentially. But now I'm going to really dig into to the point that Joe made about the process. I asked all of the division directors to ask for what they need. Ask me for what you need. And that was a shift. We hadn't really been in the space, I think, prior because the pandemic and whatnot, but I said, if you could have what you want, what would you ask for? Based on what you know our 7 virtues are this year, what the chip areas are, where we're going, and what is the federal context, right, which passes through the state. You saw a large proportion of our budget is reliant on the least stable funding right now, and that wasn't the way it was a year ago. And so this budget proposal looks very different than it might have looked under different circumstances. And you'll notice it's a lot of kind of core services that you thought forever were just safe, right? You heard about EPR. I mean, the fact that we were even considering that we would get funding for emergency preparedness just felt like a different reality. So we're gonna try to get ahead of that. Not all requests were granted into the decision packages. Joe can attest, said no multiple times, but you know why I said no? And no one's fighting and no one quit. So like, we're okay. But I truly believe in one of my values is like, if you don't ask, you don't get. So what's the worst that could happen? You know, we might as well ask, and you saw that small sliver we are of the general fund. Some of these requests will not come from that general fund pot. And kind of Joe touched on this with the capital fund, but there are many funds in the county. Some of these may come from leftover ARPA, some could come from retained revenue, that's not a concern today. Today is just, this is what we need to operate optimally. So I love an alliteration. So last year, I presented kind of our values to serve more people, right? We're gonna get efficient. This is a little bit different this year. So these are the 3 Ps that informed my decision-making about what would be included in our requests. First and foremost, we will protect programs that serve people who are currently being dehumanized, oppressed, marginalized, attacked. We will protect those programs at all costs, and I'll dig into what I consider those programs to be. That's priority tier number 1. Number 2, we're gonna prepare for what's coming. We already had a measles outbreak. What could be next? And I sat and I thought for hours, I just stare out the window and I think, if I am facing another pandemic, if we are facing another outbreak, a wildfire, who do I need on the team? What do I need? And it's not just emergency preparedness, it's infection control, policy, it's comms. So I'm thinking I need all hands on deck for a comprehensive response to whatever horrors await us. In a perfect world, in a great world, we'll be fine and everything will be okay. And wow, now we can get proactive and we can start doing some advanced planning. But I want to be ready for what the cuts in the big beautiful bill, whatever the cuts like are happening with like the staffing and federal agencies, FEMA, all of it. I want to be prepared locally. And I think if it's a local priority, it needs to be funded locally for the time being. I would say my value is the federal interests that play out on the local level should be funded by the national like defense, right? That we are part of the national defense. That's not the game we're playing right now. So we need to just take care of ourselves, at least for the next, X number of years. So that's the 2 Ps I'm gonna dig into with programs, and I think you'll probably want to see some dollar figures and all of that. But the third consideration I want to put in front of you is that we know we laid off people last year. You were here with us. It was hard. We had reductions, and it was heartbreaking for us. The intent of this budget is not to replace those positions. The intent is to make sure that the people we do have are compensated adequately, that they have room for promotion, and that we have wiggle room to restructure and to, incentivize performance, but also invest in things like professional development, travel, technology tools, and strategic positions. I would say, looking at the budget, we're really focused on these entry-level positions that with room for growth. So I think we have a responsibility to ensure that we're not just bringing in that all the MPHs of the world, that we're creating jobs for people who did not go to college. We have opportunities for medical assistants, customer service reps, administrative support, all throughout this budget at a higher rate than we've ever had before with new positions. And I really truly do believe that's part of the privilege that we have as job creators, is to make sure that we're practicing what we preach. And also just using our dollars efficiently, because we do have a fair amount of highly paid leadership. Two of them sitting here, right? And that we're going to try to get the best ROI on the positions that we're creating and have a ladder of opportunity. We need money to do that. Also, when we're replacing grants, I do want to just point out, it's not a one-to-one, like we lost 200 of Title 10 and now we're asking for 200, because we have to bake in all of those grants have overhead indirect attached to it that help support our administrative functions. So now where's that? So we had to build that in as well. And you'll see, so the numbers wouldn't back out exactly. So protect. These are the three kind of buckets in this priority. These requests account for $1.47 million, which again, it's not all coming from general fund, but I did want to, like Joe, kind of set us up, put it relative to what the general fund is fully. What is the property tax revenue of Jefferson County? 1.47 million is 0.6% of the general fund. So for that small amount, we're focusing on expansion of our harm reduction, which I'll talk about in our updates, which will be very quick. Don't worry. Not all the directors are talking. We're just gonna get through some stuff after this. So we're gonna focus on harm reduction and the integration between harm reduction and sexual health, and making sure that there's a strong bridge between field outreach and field medical outreach on the streets, in encampments, wherever we're doing our outreach for points, that we're able to pair together this kind of triaging of sexual health and family planning. We are planning on reopening our vasectomy clinic to provide male reproductive system family planning. So that's part of this budget as well. And it's actually part of our current request for some funds from the county, is to get that training and supplies up and running, and to be able to launch clinics on weekends, after hours, and to be able to meet people at the time that is most convenient for them. So that's in our sexual health and family planning space. And then Family Connects, which and both Family Connects and WIC, and you will recall WIC took the hardest hit in the reductions in force last year because their funding from the state was reduced drastically. Well, that group is now seeing numbers that are taking them past staff capacity to be able to serve. We are pitching in to help Denver and Boulder with their overflow of people. And so because the state funding formula will not catch up to demand, we need to put some money ahead of it to be able to meet all of the need. It could even out with the passage of the bill if Medicaid and SNAP and WIC has this presumptive eligibility with those programs. If that goes down, WIC could also go down, or WIC becomes the program of last resort for people who've lost benefits in SNAP. So it could go either way. We want to be ready to protect those folks no matter what happens, but we're already above the staff ratio for where we should be with the numbers we have. And so Family Connects is just growing and growing. You'll remember that's our universal home visiting program. We have to hire more nurses. We've hired marketing. It is really growing. We had a paid campaign that just took it through the roof for interest in Family Connects, and we can't keep up with demand. So these are two populations we serve that I don't wanna lose our ability to serve those folks. So that's the protect space. For 1.47 million, we would have really, really strong growth in all four of those programs. Then I'm gonna talk about these. We'll go back to capital improvement and we'll get the questions quickly because I don't wanna belabor all of this, but prepare, you heard and engaged with a great FIOP conversation, but we may not think about the expansion of our policy group to be able to keep on top of all the changes. I mean, we're talking, it's Kelly, right? Plus a few other folks here and there, but we really need to make sure that we have someone on the ground municipally, that Kelly has the administrative support And that we have strategic messaging support in our comms and public affairs to be able to meet these challenges over the next few years. When, like, we need to get ahead of it, and it can't all fall on the shoulders of one policy director. And so, investing in that and investing in our relationships with the private sector, with EDCs, with chambers, I think is gonna be really valuable for our long-term funding stability and growth, because those are the folks who are gonna help us maybe potentially one day run a campaign for an alternative funding source, right? Those were the folks who would take it. And we just need to intentionally serve those groups as well. EPR, as I mentioned with FEP, which is the Public Health Emergency Preparedness, like kind of core funding. I mean, it's been up until the buzzer, like, will we get it? Will we not get it? How much will it be? There's so much lost energy and staff time devoted to where's the money? Are we getting the money? How much will the state keep for their overhead? And that if we could give ourselves some stability and breathing room, we actually could like be proactive in preparing, right? I don't want to completely divest. I'll take all the money, right? Because we have plenty we need to do above and beyond this. But I just want to provide the staff a safety net to be able to sleep well at night and focus on their work and not where's the money coming from. And then infectious disease epi, our case investigators have also already had the craziest year, right? They're like, we didn't have measles outbreak on our bingo board for 2025. And I don't think it'll be the last vaccine preventable disease outbreak or any sort of pandemic outbreak we see in the next, handful of years. So we need to maintain the optimal staffing for them. They are connected to some federal funding, as well as consumer protection, environmental inspection. The connection between foodborne illness and the infectious disease epis, what's that look like? Like, we have to strengthen that. So that's part of that preparation space. I'm gonna turn it back to Joe to talk about capital improvement real briefly, and then we will open it up for questions.
So just starting with clearly defining what the capital improvement project would be. So the capital improvement refers to a significant non-recurring major project or investment in tangible assets such as land, buildings, transportation, infrastructure, and equipment. So this request is separate from the decision package of business cases because it does not include staff or cannot include staff. So, but tangible assets, a location, a building, equipment needed to set up that space for our programs. I had planned to discuss the details behind the $2.5 million request, but realized that at this point, it's important to focus in on what could potentially be provided with this funding. And I think it's important to note that what that provides is a freedom to explore options for health services in Jeffco. So there are still options on the table. There's still discussions being made, but again, this request is kind of the start of that process. Ensuring that this funding is available will provide a lot more opportunities than what we've had in the past. I will say this funding, if awarded, would provide that leverage to open up some of those discussions we've never been a part of in the past. Chasing funding to account for what we believe is the bare minimum of what we need is really not getting us anywhere. So this really is making sure that we have that option, that opportunity to provide those services in Jeffco that we feel are necessary for our constituents, for the people in Jefferson. So I don't have details at this point. I mean, I do, but I don't want to share. I won't share. But it's important to note that we do have that request slated for conversation with the commissioners. So hopefully we have more details to share. We will have more details to share, but hopefully we'll have more good news around this funding. Again, we believe this is a strong case and this is sufficient funds to move us into the next phase of the Did I miss something?
Clinic relocation, that's what this is about. Just wanted to be very clear about that.
There's just too many notes. to
Yeah,
cover
I know.
everything.
It's the clinic. As you can tell by these lovely pictures we have up here, of all the different opportunities. So this, it might not be one place, it might be many places, it might be one brick and mortar and increased mobile capacity. We're not sure yet because leading into the questions, we are without a clinic director right now, and that has opened an opportunity for us to reevaluate how the clinic leadership is structured and whether we need a different way of doing business. As I mentioned I believe Rochelle was there at the all staff town hall. We talked a little bit about what's the future look like. I am sitting down with Kelly, with Christine and the entire clinic staff on Thursday. So I don't want to say too much about the vision because I want them to hear it first. I think they are owed that. But I've gotten a lot of feedback from the entire clinic team about what's needed. And I don't want to be presumptuous about how this money would be spent until I have that leadership in-house to help us make those decisions. So that's where we're at with clinical services, but the future is very bright. So questions for us? How you feeling? What can we clarify for you?
Or. I have some. One of the things that I think is really important is doing, actually looking what you're doing finally, because it's something I've practical, the budget process to do one time something that. Or is ask for what we need versus just take whatever is given to us and be happy. We have to make the case of why this is important, so. Where the board can put everyone, that's important for us to know so that we can do that. It is also important to look at funding restrictions as we plan for all of these new things, public health, emergency operations stuff. When there's food funds, those are restricted funds. Those people can't be diverted to go work on this emergency and do measles when they're being paid to do, let's say, wastewater or food or whatever. So that we're robustly funded and not tapping into people that now don't have that ability.
Right.
So also structuring ways that and I know Jim, a lot of his staff are split across a lot of programs, which is helpful in that regard too, because if you're 100% funded by fees, you're not gonna get tapped into. So that is really important to me, thinking about the future of being prepared for what we don't even know is coming.
Yeah.
There will likely be some of those responses that was something we probably definitely need to plan. So that's really important. And then just again, where those advocacy points are, because we're sure both the commissioners fully understand that. We have really strong commissioners right now. So
Yeah.
tapping into that is really important as well. But
I do want to address that. We kind of had a feeling that you were going to ask how the board can support. And I have two things that I wanted to say. I know Joe had one thing, but I'll say that I'm going to have Kelly work with Kelly and her team, work with you individually to kind of like strategically place, right, where you're able to give advocacy, support, have a coffee, or bare minimum, I think when we present in August, it would be great to have a statement from the board that we could put together that just shows your at least initial support of our approach and what we're all about, and especially in that protect space, to be like, these are programs that are under attack. And I do want to say this, and to your point about flexibility, I think one of the unintended benefits of kind of stepping back from some federal funding for a minute is we're not beholden to the values, to the ideological values baked into some of these notices of award. There are notices of award that require you to promise you won't criticize the United States when you're doing education, right? That you have no DEI programs, that you're gonna counsel on abstinence. Like, I'm not comfortable lying in those spaces in order to take $155,000. Like, to me, that's just discordant with the values of the county that have been stated by our commissioners. So I think the flexibility is good. I don't wanna be out of the game forever, you know, but we all have to kind of adjust and as we go. And I know you had something about board engagement that you wanted to mention.
Yes, thank you. During the, what was it, the Health Champions Luncheon, I think I mentioned to a couple of the board members, I feel like we're on that cusp of a renaissance period. I think I got some looks of maybe this guy's crazy. Rightfully so, because look at what happened since then till now. But as Dr. Story had mentioned, with our decision packages, with our capital improvement, we are tapping into various buckets of funding. Some we were not aware were available. The partnerships, I believe, the engagement, the conversations, passing along those conversations is what is critical to make sure that we are continuing to thrive. Even at the county level, as we're having conversations about one bucket of funds, it is being brought to our attention that there are other reserves that are untapped right now that public health may want to start participating in those conversations. So we are seeing partnerships, partner levels that I've not witnessed before. So the ask of the board is one, I'm not, not crazy, but you've got to be optimistic in these times. And it is nearly impossible to keep up with all these conversations. So as we look at our networks, our untapped networks, our partnership networks, it's important to make sure that those conversations are making their ways back to us. Because we're lean, we're doing a lot, and we need to make sure that we are exploring all opportunities, whether we're aware of them, whether we can partake in them or not. So please make sure that you are carrying us into your conversations, but engaging with us as well so that we can explore every opportunity possible.
Well, I think that leads into the project the board has been working on, looking about who to replace me on the board. So that's a huge part of it, is that community connection to really advocate, set us up financially as well. So that's what I thought I was thinking about.
Well, you're not going to, I mean, we're gonna tether you some.
Before I turn over, the other thing that's really important is what you talked about is having really a robust operating budget, because that's often what happens when times get lean, is people just cut out everything. There's no training budget, there's no this, and now programs have no ability to function. They have people, probably still not enough, but
Right.
they have nothing else.
Right.
And what kind of organization will we create? Who wants to stay? And it feels like sort of a dying ship because there's nothing there. And that growth opportunity is really important. So,
Yeah.
so it's really hard to lose people, but we have to make sure our budget is robust. So that we are keeping, to know that we're investing in that. So,
I'm very grateful we made the hard decisions when we did, because it set us up for a stronger ask this year.
Yeah.
I will say to Joe's credit, he additionally cut the administrative overhead budget going into next year by a lot. Like, he has turned over every couch cushion to figure out how we can get more efficient. And I'm very grateful for that. And also just work should be fun. Like, we should be able to send people to public health in the Rockies and NACHO, and we have a whole strengths finder, training sessions all year that people are getting to dig into themselves and how they work best, and what a joy that is. And there is this, I've seen it, a tendency to be like, well, the supply of labor is so inelastic, the supply of labor is so fresh and big because of all the layoffs happening. We could just cut all the perks because everyone needs a job. And that's just not reflecting the values of this leadership team. So, and I have to give Jim a lot of credit, and this is something I would love to bring back to the board to talk more about in the future. Both Christine and Jim have taken on this idea that there should be, and Kelly as well, individual contributor career ladder. Because in the county, the career ladder is correlated with how many people you are supervising and their level. So it's very hard to grow in the county if you're not managing people. I believe that you should be able to grow in your career if you don't manage people and you're just contributing individually. And so we're finding ways to reward people for growing up that ladder. Again, starting in entry level and growing up to more strategy advisor level without having necessarily, unless it's in their growth plan, to supervise people. It's a little bit of a block to growth. And I think that's unfortunate. So we're exploring with HR different ways of figuring that out as well. So, thank you.
Can you give me an understanding from the pie charts? How much of the federal funding is passed through to the state? How much do we get directly?
Directly, 0.
You don't get it.
Well, tiny is good. There was a little bit in Family Connects from the Office of Minority Health.
But not like
0%.
percentage.
0%. So the way the pie chart, correct me if I'm wrong, the part of the state grants that's 30% is direct, like
Is
state
state dollars,
grants.
yeah.
And then we have the federal grants that are mostly, not entirely passed through. Yeah.
Okay. The. I gotta follow that. In the, protect section, in the opening slides, we
Mhm.
talked about, like that one. We talked about immigrants, and I'm not seeing that reflected in the 3 areas specifically that you're focusing on. Can you help me understand where you're specifically focusing on protection of immigrant populations through the 3 programs we talked about?
Sure, so. It's across all this. We serve a disproportionate number of newcomers in all of our clinical services compared to the population as a whole, and in Family Connects and in WIC by the furthest. So WIC actually serves as a proportion of their clients, a higher proportion of newcomers or immigrants who've been here a minute, documented, undocumented, are in WIC. That is why we did not RIF any bilingual WIC educator last year, because it's that population that has grown the most. So I will say we're not saying, here's the Office of Immigrant Health. We're saying these are the programs that do that. These are the programs that serve the most people who have, who are sexual and gender minority groups, who are, identifying in that way. You can just look at the data and be like, this is way disproportionate than the population as a whole. And the same obviously for people who use drugs. So that was the kind of call out. When I think about who will I lay down our lives for, it's these groups, it's these programs because of the direct services for those priority populations. So that's where it's gonna be sprinkled throughout.
Do you feel like the WIC funding limits your ability to reach those populations, given that it has some ties to state and federal funds that could be a threat?
We have not seen any threats to WIC except for the fruit and vegetable subsidy, which we've been working and advocating for, and the National WIC Association has been advocating for. I think my personal opinion is negotiating with the USDA is very different right now than negotiating with HHS or any other agency connected to HHS. So we're so far so good on some of like the benefits and on the federal and state funding. We just have to wait for that formula to catch up with us. So, thank you.
Yeah, that was my one particular one.
Yeah.
Like, there could be a risk here, but yeah.
Yeah, we haven't had to sign an oath.
Yeah.
And, as you recall our conversation around, clinic security, and Lindsay and the team have done such an amazing job of making sure we've got signs posted. This is private space. Our front desk is on alert. Like, we're doing 2 back to school vaccine campaigns. One is kind of a satire one, and then the other one is specifically for Spanish speaking residents, and it is focused on you are safe with us. Like, we will keep you safe. We will come to you. We will figure it out. Like, just you need to get vaccinated. And that's the angle we're taking. So it's another, this has come up before, but like this happened before I got here, but I have mixed feelings about how even having an Office of Health Equity. And we have a Hispanic health liaison on that team. I think it is everyone's responsibility, and you can see by these 3 clusters of programs that this is where the ground game is. So that's where we're gonna put the money.
Yeah, that's also part of it, is I just had a conversation today around. The need to increase access to telehealth for folks who do not feel safe coming in person and ensuring that kind of. And that's more infrastructure,
Yeah.
operational base, but still part of some of this.
But it's on our list
Yeah.
in this budget, in the preparation side. If I showed you the spreadsheet, would be technology.
Yeah.
Because we have no system for figuring out where our relationships lie and what's the last contact we had with people. We're using many different systems. And we're not providing, I think, adequate professional development to feel comfortable using them, so.
Yeah.
We're getting there, right? These budget requests are not all people, and hear you, feel you, yeah, for sure, yeah.
So, similar to the question about, immigrants and other populations like that, you didn't mention the homeless, but I'm assuming they would kind of fit into that same framework?
Well, I would say that, yeah, so. There is a significant overlap between our Points West clients and the unhoused, but not entirely. That Venn diagram is not a complete one circle. And so really thinking about with this capital improvement proposal, how are we increasing? It is my vision to increase our street outreach, at least double it by the end of 2026. Which is going to mean that care is gonna have to be more comprehensive. And right now, we're at a capacity issue with staff around, we are in the jails, we are looking for all these other opportunities. We will, and I am very, now, very close with the supervisors in the clinic, because there is no director. Very hands-on with figuring out how we structure that moving forward and get funding for that. And I'll talk a little bit about that in updates too. But that's another population that we are very close with the homeless services team at Human Services. We are the severe weather people. I sit on the board of Heading Home. So there are those connections. We are part of the co-responder core team for that. So we continue to find inroads as we can.
Yeah, I mean, I think I see the situation for those people becoming worse
Yes,
over the next
Yes.
few years. So hopefully we're planning for an increase, in
Yes.
what we're able to do.
and we definitely have plans to increase staff on our outreach teams.
Yeah.
That is already going to happen likely this year.
Yeah.
Because of funding, yeah.
And the other question I had was is pretty much a curiosity question, but maybe you can also talk about then what do we see as the benefit of that? Is you said we were working with Denver and Boulder clients under, I think it was either Family Connect or WIC, okay? And I'm wondering why and what the benefits are for that.
Well, the benefits would increase our caseload numbers. And if you recall during the WIC kind of funding changes,
Yeah,
we were dinged funding
Okay.
because we don't serve enough people.
okay.
Our long-term vision, increase uptake in our own county.
Yeah.
That takes a minute, it's gonna take a minute for us to get there, especially given to the point about immigrant families, their comfort levels with going in clinic, yeah. Then if we look at the potential cuts to Head Start, that's a major population base for us for eligibility for WIC. So, and we co-locate, at least in one, right down the street from you, with Head Start. So all of that kind of remains to be seen. The money requested here is really for basically growth and consulting around WIC and how do we get our people through the doors. In the meantime, the easiest way to get our numbers up is to help those counties who have an overrun of people. So instead of those clients waiting 3 weeks for an appointment, they only have to wait 3 days and we can take care of them telehealth. Even if they're far away, we can do a virtual visit. Because I mean, I know this sounds a little bit cheesy, but I don't care if you're hungry in Denver. Right, because you're also have a tendency then to cross lines when you are seeking clinical care services.
Oh, yeah.
Right? both ways, and we know this because Denver Health is our chief medical officer sign off, so we're pretty aware of the shared patient census we have across both spaces. So for now, it's a good neighbor approach, and it helps us get those numbers to restore our funding from the state. Yeah, thanks for asking that question.
Any questions? Good work. More to come, but do what we can to support that success, because it will be nice to see that the less budget gets full. And again, our commissioners are gonna have difficult decisions. They don't have tons of money to just throw
Of course,
around,
yeah.
but at the same time, we're not asking nearly as much as any of our counterparts
Yeah.
are, so it's making our case, and then they have to weigh and create their priorities, which is always hard.
Well, yeah, and I just will say, you might hear, you know, if you kind of keep tabs on the BCC and their briefings, in early August, there will be a hearing around one-time request, mid-year requests, and we are part of that package for replacement of our Title X funding, which we no longer receive. So in the you'll hear in the sexual health space, a one-time request for a gap fill and startup costs for the vasectomy clinics, which, given the financial forecast and the need around vasectomies and access, we should be recouping a lot of revenue from that, even with changes to Medicaid, even with loss of insurance, sliding scale. So I think our clinic revenue is really gonna come in the clutch. By mid-year 26, we should be, I believe, the clinic will be self-sustaining financially by 2028. That's the goal. So I think we can get there, even with changes to insurance coverage. So more to come on that. Thank you. You want to stay here while I do these director updates?
No.
Kind of awkward.
Yeah.
Okay. I'm gonna be so fast, and then I'm gonna let Angel come up and
Thank
do
you.
the employee of the month. Thank you, John. Okay, so I want to just mention a few things. No one else is talking aside from Angel. And I mean, will there be like an acceptance speech of some sort? Okay, no one likes to talk as much as me, so, I wanted to talk about three things. One is NACHO, which is next week, and I want to thank the board for being flexible and moving the meeting to this week. I know it's right after a holiday, and like, I appreciate it, because we have so many people going to both that and NEHA. The environmental health conference is gonna be real quiet in the office, so keep an eye on everybody. We'll see, I don't know who's in charge. We actually, it's Lindsay. Lindsay's in charge, because, so, you know, we went down the chain of command, and Lindsay is it. So Lindsay's making decisions next week. But I did, for the benefit of staff, and we've talked about this before, I do wanna just say the kind of sessions that are going to be going on that Jefferson County is presenting, to give you again the breadth, but also just to put in public record, like, good job. So we have a quality improvement session, led by Faro Palazzolo, who is multi-talented. But he is taking that idea of doing the 2-week sprints on QI that we've talked about here, and letting people know what worked, what didn't work. And that's a full-on hour session. Centering lived experience, peer-led support, and drug checking to address health disparities for people who use drugs. That's Points West team. They have a 90-minute session on Wednesday. Built from scratch. We truly like a title with a colon. Did you all notice that? Like, all our titles do that? It's so silly. Built from scratch, the recipe for local health departments utilizing policy and advocacy to improve health. That's a Friday session. Kelly and Michael, who's the Kelly of Adams County, doing a cross-county joint, and you remember them from the joint board meeting. They are a great team, so they will be doing a session as well. And then we have this is a long, I won't even say the whole title. Allison Wilson and Sierra Thompson, they have the longest title, but it's Access and Functional Needs. Which, as you recall, was born out of the emergency preparedness space, and how do we help people who have disabilities, like, be included in preparedness planning. Allison and Sierra took that department-wide for daily consideration of inclusion. And they won a model practice award that is the gold standard for NECHO. They're one of a few health departments who are gonna be celebrated. We haven't won one of those since 2016, 2017. That also happened to be Allison, so she's like really killing it. And so Allison and Sierra will be accepting that award at NECHO, and they have an on-demand session that people can watch at their leisure. A lot of us have on-demand sessions, and we'll make sure that you get copies of those so you can have them to, I don't know, circulate around. So Stop the Scroll, which is about our new approach to communications and marketing. That's me and Kelly and Noella. We recorded a full 30-minute talk show that we did instead of a slideshow. So we are excited to show you that blooper reel as well soon too. And then we also have what I've heard, the feedback on this one. I have people who I've never met in person messaging me on LinkedIn saying, I'm getting there 30 minutes early for this particular session because I need it. It's called Our Bodies Do Keep Score, Understanding the Role of Emotional Regulation in the Workplace. It's 120 minutes. It's a pre-conference workshop on Tuesday. So there's a lot of buzz around that one on the agenda. And I want to thank you if you came to one of the practice sessions. I know, Rochelle, you were able to come to so many, and like your feedback and presence was really meaningful to the team. So thank you for that. And I can't wait to celebrate with all of these folks at NECHO. So thank you for humoring me on that. I know it's late, but I like the minutes to reflect like the accomplishments of the staff, right? So I just wanted to put that out there. Unfortunately, we're like all in the same plane on the way home, and I hate when that happens because I don't want people to see me in airplane mode. It feels weird, so I might change my flight. I don't want to be on the same plane as the entire staff, so. Number two, we have a fair amount of clinic events coming up for back to school vaccines that I want to highlight. We've talked a little bit about these, but we have dates now that are on our website. So July 31st, we'll be partnering with the Action Center for a back to school supply drive at Everett Middle School, which is in Wheat Ridge. That'll be 9 to 3. In August, we're gonna have a bunch of like school-based stuff through the fall, but August kind of back to school bash for Jeffco Public Schools at the Jeffco Stadium from 9 to 2 in Lakewood. And we're also at a lot of these events gonna have our health equity organizers out, meeting with people, listening, talking, so there's gonna be some other engagement, not just vaccinations. And then we're doing shots for tots and teens, 3 of those, which kind of corresponds, you get back in the groove, your kid goes to school, and then you get a letter like, hey, your kid needs this vaccine or they can't come back. This is what those are meant for after school starts, getting people caught up. So we have September 6th, October 4th, and November 1st. All of those are at our clinic. And those are Saturdays usually. Yeah, those are on Saturdays to make it convenient for staff or for patients. On that note, starting in August, we will be condensing our appointment hours to make time to do more of these outreach events and to get out in community to have these mass events. And so for the time being, appointments for vaccines will be Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, not through Thursday. Thursdays will be reserved for outreach. So I think that's a wise decision of that team and reflects where I'm hoping we go with vaccinations. Third, and definitely not least, congratulations to the Points West team for receiving GROC funding. So the Opioid Council funding decisions were released. Points West Harm Reduction, which is a program of JCPH, was the highest awarded amount of any of the recipients. So that is a blessing, but also it puts a renewed spotlight on the program, and we want to make sure we're available, me and their leadership, to the board to answer questions, to receive feedback you may hear from the community, because there will be more attention on this program now that they are publicly listed as receiving $1.5 million, which is a testament to their success. The program is effective. It's saving lives, hundreds of lives. It's avoiding so many healthcare costs with infectious disease, and they're the most compassionate. I got to sit with them packing kits for a couple hours, a couple weeks ago. The glow on that team with all of the hurt they see, the hardships they see, the way they come into the room, it's amazing. And I believe they've been rewarded for that. And they got more money than the city of Lakewood. I mean, like, it is a real accomplishment. And they spent a lot of hours on that proposal. This will also allow us to explore regional expansion into our rural neighbors who don't have the capacity to do harm reduction on their own teams. So both Clear Creek and Gilpin, and exploring MOUs with those counties. So that's exciting as well. So, I'm gonna stop and I'm gonna turn it over to Angel Anderson, who's going to present, our Employee of the Month. Apparently there is no acceptance speech planned, and I'm gonna vacate the seat, so maybe it can be filled. Okay, here I go. Get out there, at least show, you didn't let it sit in front of the camera.
All right. Good afternoon. Glasses on, easy.
So it's my pleasure to introduce the June, July Employee of the Month, Joy Richards. Joy is true to her name, a joy to have on our team. Our nominator captured it best. Joy's been a driving force behind our measles preparedness efforts at JCPH. She stepped into a leadership role with clarity, focus, and an incredible sense of responsibility. From coordinating across programs to guiding our response strategy, Joy led with both precision and heart. Our one shining example of her leadership was a recent measles tabletop exercise. Joy worked closely with our emergency preparedness and response team to plan and deliver an exercise that was not only meaningful, but highly effective. Her ability to turn complex planning into real-world actionable steps made the event a huge success, helping us identify gaps, test our systems, and engage staff in meaningful preparedness work. But beyond the logistics and strategy, what sets Joy apart is how she shows up for her team. She brings infectious positive energy, calm in the midst of chaos, and a deep sense of care for the people around her. Whether it's working extra hours, jumping in wherever needed, or simply offering words of encouragement, Joy lifts up everyone she works with. She strengthens morale, builds trust, and truly makes JCPH a better place to work. For her expertise, her collaboration, and the light she brings to our team, I'm honored to recognize Joy as our June-July Employee of the Month.
You don't have to do that. Yeah. Just bow. Just bow. Yeah. Yeah, and we'll be at lunch. Yeah, you got lots of like slapping here.
And just know that it's both of our biggest fear to, so you know.
Oh, Lord. Thank you.
Look forward to having lunch with you.
Me too, I already looked at the menu.
It's a great menu, isn't it?
Yeah.
No.
Mr. President, that was the end of our updates from the directors, right? So you're excused, we're done on our side, now it's all you.
Well, I'm gonna still offer staff comments, so that's our next agenda, so. One last chance for staff to share. Board of Health.
I want to, so Dr. Story thanked, us for rescheduling. I also want to thank us for the second reschedule, because initially this was going to be rescheduled for the week after the normally scheduled meeting, and I will be across the pond in England. And I said, oh, please. So thank you all for that. Thanks to Dr. Story and to Joe for a really informative presentation. I feel like that's the best I've seen in all my years on the board in terms of feeling like I know what's what. And congrats to Joy for, sounds like wonderful, wonderful work.
Well, I want to congratulate Joy as well. She's been fun to meet in the past and you've done a great job. Well, I'm just very impressed and I got a lot out of both of the presentations from Jeanette and thank you, and from Mitch. I think these are just very beneficial because it helps us, it's lingo is not my thing when you're talking about all the acronyms and stuff. And so I really appreciate when you come and put it into terms of stuff that are very, very simple. So thank you. And Dr. Story and Joe, I think that you've just really done a remarkable job. I like how you have gotten that, down to breaking it out. And it really is inclusive. It's really transparent. So you do a lot with a little. So we appreciate you.
Joy, I think, was our first employee of the month. That's actually 2 months, so I think it seems appropriate, right? Or was it?
Oh, yeah, she's employee of the months. Yeah.
Lunch and dinner.
Yes, I mean. It just seems appropriate, right? 2 months of you're doing great work. Okay, so my comments are, thank you, all the boards. I think it's the first time we've all been in person for one of these meetings.
Yay.
Like, I think it showed how many questions we had. That being in person actually generates more conversation, so I appreciate that. I do want to draw attention to an email that Lindsay sent you all today, that we have a survey about our own skills and expertise as board members that we need you to complete as soon as possible, so that we can start assessing and understanding our own board skill and expertise to unfortunately have to fill Lane's shoes and as we're recruiting for the next board member. So that is in your inbox right now. I did test it out. It functions fine. I haven't typed it. I haven't actually done it, but it's there. If you have questions about the questions, Sherry and I created the survey. Ask us, but also ask Lindsay if you have any functional questions on it. Please do it as soon as possible. The sooner we can get it done, the sooner we can assess it and analyze it, and the sooner we can know and understand how we'll recruit successfully for Lane's position, and that we can get people to actually apply. That's it. That's all I got.
Do we want to deadline date?
Did you put a deadline in the email? I don't remember seeing.
What's reasonable for them?
When do you leave for England?
A week from tomorrow.
Yeah, a week from tomorrow. Yeah. Okay, the 21st. Harriet's deadline is a week from tomorrow. Everyone else is-
The 21st.
Yeah. It was kind of good time to check it out, but the 21st seems reasonable. And Lindsay, can we assign to you to send a reminder out? It'll be on the 14th? Yeah. You.
I also want to congratulate Joy. I think that's outstanding. Great comments in your nomination. And I also want to congratulate all of our staff that are presenting at NATO. I took so much pride in going to those rehearsals and watching you all shine. It was exciting, it was refreshing, and I just felt so proud to think to myself, like, they're representing us. Like, that's incredible. I'm excited for the presentations. I know everybody's gonna do an excellent job. I just know it. And I look even more forward to when everybody returns and you get to share that excitement with all of us about what it felt like to present such awesome presentations, such thought out presentations, such quality presentations. It might sound kind of corny, but I am so proud of each and every one of you that are doing presentations. It's a lot of work, and it's not an easy thing to be chosen for these presentations. There are so many people who submit, it's so competitive. And look how many of our staff are gonna go shine. I think that is so, it's just killer. I just can't even say it enough. I'm so proud of everybody, absolutely. And then our presentations that we had today, thank you, Mitch, and, just both of them were great, presentations. And last time when we were together, we had another very quality presentation, Jim. These are welcome, and I think it's a nice change, and I just think that for me personally, I really get a lot out of that. And I want y'all to know that, it helps us engage more. It helps us be more knowledgeable about what the needs are, where we're going, things along those lines. And I really appreciate all the effort put into those presentations. On that, yeah.
Very well said. And I think it is. I think the board does get a great sense of pride in seeing the success of this agency. So it does help us feel like we've supported you some more along to continue to be successful. So it's great. And I think with that, during this meeting, very, very glad everyone is here, and this is very robust. So,